Hello, everyone, and welcome to Business Performance USA webinar series. We're really happy you could join us today. We have an excellent topic today and an excellent speaker. So again, thanks so much. And if you're watching online, which is becoming a common habit for our members, welcome and belated, and thanks for taking the time to learn about change. Obvious today is this subject, leading change, positive strategies for big changes. And that's what we're really all about. So I'm sorry, I'm just reading messages. And so sorry for the distraction. Okay, Business Performance USA. We're really all about people, process, and performance. People come first in our book because we really believe that we want to liberate the human potential in companies, that people are capable of so much more in workplaces if we trust them, honor them, and respect their ideas, and help them work through change, if you will. So what business performance is all about is pollinating great ideas out there in the workplace and creating change, positive change in the workplace. So that's what we're about today. And let me just jump in, do a little bit of housekeeping here. First introductions, there I am on the left. And our co-host and presenter today, our co-host is Dr. Jeff Stewart. Dr. Jeff and Cynthia Stewart are both co-founders of Business Performance USA and have committed to this endeavor because they believe in giving back and volunteering and helping people invigorate their careers and helping businesses grow. Dr. Jeff, I can just sum up in one word, strategy. He's really a chief strategist for Business Performance USA as well as for his clients. Lived in the Fortune 500, Fortune 50 world, and it's just a really smart, insightful, and intuitive individual, a real gem and joy to work with. Of course, Cynthia Stewart, managing partner of Evermore Services. I'll be talking a little more about Cynthia in a minute, but let me just get some housekeeping out of the way. We do want you to ask questions. You can ask those questions via the questions tool, obviously, on the user interface, but you can also simply use it, the chat feature as well. That works perfectly fine. Whatever is most intuitive for you, and that'll work. We just monitor both. So if you do have questions about this, and we encourage you to email Cynthia at businessperformanceusa.org, and she'll be happy to answer those questions for you. You can also sign up to become a member. It's always complimentary. If you go to our website, businessperformanceusa.org, you'll see the blue button in the right top corner. Look for the B, our pollinator, if you will, and become a member. Again, it's always complimentary. And of course, look for the Business Performance USA channel on YouTube to watch any and all of our videos. So thanks for that. And let me just tell you a little about Cynthia Stewart, again, a co-founder of Business Performance USA, the managing partner of her own business, Evermore Services. Clearly, Cynthia is a leader, transformer, change maven, strategist, if you will. It's not enough for Cynthia or really in an organization to have a good idea. It has to be a good idea executed well, and that's what Cynthia really, really does well. She's got her MBA and is certified by the American Society for Quality as a manager of quality and organizational excellence, and she's also a Six Sigma black belt. So Cynthia can really kick it, if you will, in a business environment, but she's also exceptionally good at the soft skills as well. Trained discipline, hard skills, soft skills, because she understands people, knows how to communicate well, and really can take a company strategy and get it executed in a manner of true excellence. So that's what she's all about. She's a leader, she's a coach, she's a strategist, and she's just generally a wonderful person and based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, the heartland, if you will. And with that, Cynthia, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you do your thing. Let me just do a little presentation change here.
Thank you, Victor. I appreciate that. Okay. Let me show my screen and give me a minute as I get this set up.
You're all fine. So again, folks, ask questions as you will. Our webinars are really meant to create awareness of what is possible, and we'll give you some tips and tricks for taking action, but really action is the whole point. And Cynthia, I'll let you take it away.
Okay, Victor, I hope you're seeing this now. Leading change. I have always been a change leader, and I didn't know that's what I was destined to be, but it just seemed to be the way it was because I started in information technology. And what I find about change is there's two opposing forces at work. Number one, change is inevitable. I mean, the seasons change, our bodies change, the world around us changes, and so change is inevitable. And the opposing force to that is that we're wired not to like change because we get comfortable and we get into our habits, and that helps us to be very productive. So when we have to face change, often, there's a lot of resistance. And I find that people who are about to make big changes are most concerned about people and their resistance. But there are ways that you can really honor the reasons why they're resisting and work through change using a change management scheme and a system, which I'm going to show to you, which will make change a whole lot easier for everyone involved. And as easy as it can be when we're considering that at the base of change is the change of behavior, no matter what kind of change it is. So when you're leading change, it's all about planning. It's all about really knowing if the change is working, and it's about how to increase the likelihood of success. So those are some of the things that I'll be talking about today. And so, Victor, just so I get a feel for the folks that are on the call, let's find out what's the biggest problem that they face with change. Is it the plan? Is it the people? Or is it the process? So if you could raise that poll up, and we'll see what folks say about that.
There you go, Cynthia.
So if you could, very good. So select one of the following: the plan, the people, or the process. Just one.
And we'll give you just a couple minutes there. So in your organization, is people are planning well enough for change and anticipating it? Are the people the problem, or is it just the process to get through it?
I know what I would answer. I was thinking about it as I was doing it.
All right. So 3 choices there. Pick the one. Cynthia, I'm going to close this out in just a minute here.
Okay.
And rack it up. Not to bias things, but people are leading here a little bit, unfortunately. So I'm going to close this out, and Cynthia, let you take it away. Or do you want me to read the results?
Yeah, go ahead and let us know what the results are, and I'll get my screen back. There we go. So what did they say?
They're 70. This is a little surprising to me, but maybe not. 70% say people are the problem with change, which is interesting, and I can actually understand that quite well. Process comes in at 22%, which leaves a very little amount for the plan, which is interesting. So,
so Victor, what would you have said? Which would you have chosen?
I get the people because in a workplace, people can be frustrating or frustrated by change, and they're not given a proper plan and not given process, so people can seem like they're the problem. I give it the process. Change is a process, so I would vote for number 3.
Yeah, it's my instinct too to say it's really the people, because they resist change and we have to deal with their attitudes, and it's not invented here, or that's not the status quo, so forth and so on. And I've had, you name it, because I've been in change forever, and I've literally, when I counted it up, I couldn't even believe it, hundreds of teams, thousands of people I've worked with. And so it's true that people seem to be the problem with change, but we're going to talk about that and if that's really the truth. First of all, I want to just find out, and folks, if you would, just kind of text in, use the chat feature or the question feature and let Victor know what kind of change are you faced with. Is it a change in the culture? You need to change the culture, or do you have some pretty major business systems, or even putting people on some kind of a system as a service platform like Salesforce or one of those? Is it a system issue? Or are you going through infrastructure changes? HR, I know, is changing big because of healthcare. We have the possibility of organizational structural changes. Or are there some really core processes that are changing, like the way that you deal, like your customer services, how you're dealing with customer services, how you're communicating people, maybe adopting social media. So give Victor an idea about that. But these change elements are with us all the time. And basically, the environment changes, and that means that we have to create a new strategy to really adapt to the environment, such as the Affordable Care Act is a huge change for businesses right now. So many things can cause us to have to change, and at any rate, change management is how we structure things to go from as is, the current state it's often called, to the future state, or how we want to be. And I can't stress how many different kinds of changes there are, but this model is sort of doing that. That can really cause us to have to change. And when you see this model, I'd like to kind of point to the very center. I hope you can see those little smaller blue arrows. They're sort of in the shape of a star. I want you to think about that as the people. The people are in the center, and it's the stakeholders and the leaders and all the folks that are going to be affected by the change. They're in the middle, kind of swimming in all this change with culture and systems and structure and so forth. So we don't want to leave the people out, because it really is all about the people.
So Cynthia, I've got, just in regards to the input that people offered, and thank you for that. We appreciate your participation. Culture came up 3 times with folks. That probably relates to the high level of perception that people are the problem in regards to change. Process came in a couple of times. Structure came in another time, one more time, at least and that's the totality of people that voted. There's more out there. But so culture number 1 is the one issue that people are struggling with.
Yeah, culture. I really work in culture and have worked on significant culture changes across the years, because I worked for a very large corporation, and then I've worked with smaller companies as well. And culture, it doesn't surprise me that it came up. I'm not going to deal with these things that I talk about today. Will be useful for you, whether it's a culture change or a system change or so forth. But I will say that at the heart of culture change is a really great management operating system, and that may have to be a different webinar. Because if you have a really good management operating system, which is how do you operate as managers, and maybe I'll do that as my next webinar.
Could be.
Because you have a really good, a management operating system. People go, what is that? That's your culture. And you can.
So Cynthia, I'll just jump in and encourage folks to contact you after this webinar or after you watch it online, and think about where change needs to take place, where you struggle with it, and talk to Cynthia about it. These 5 buckets pretty much cover everything. If you're having a change issue, it's going to occur within one of these 5 buckets. But the point is that you can't affect change in one of these without considering how that change will ricochet in the other 4. So this is all interconnected. And the truth is, you're going to end up managing all 5 of these to some degree, and that's what Cynthia is here to help you with. Thanks.
And, when we think about that, and I hate to switch back and forth so quickly, but I may have to do that. Basically, when you think about change, there's a change equation that I want you guys to really think about. It's called the change effectiveness equation. And the quality of solution, we're really good at designing quality, designing solutions. It turns out that, we can engineer lots of things. The challenge is really in the acceptance strategy. And it turns out that the acceptance strategy is multiplicative. It multiplies the effectiveness, I should say, of your change. And so what that means is if the quality of the solution, let's say that you've got a 99%, I mean, it is an A+ solution. It is only as good as your acceptance strategy. And that strategy is all around really building buy-in and building momentum for the change. And so that's the side of things that we're going to address. When I look at the quality of solution, and again, you know, if we have requests, I can go into the quality of solution and we can talk about how do you plan for change using these kinds of, like if it's culture change or so forth, systems. I dealt heavily in core process. Actually, I dealt in all of these for different reasons. But if these are done well and planned well, that's your quality of solution. And I'm going to talk about the acceptance strategy. And the acceptance strategy is right in the heart of the people, how well the people get on board with the change at hand. So when we attend to the Q, or the quality of the solution, that's really getting to the vision and beginning to realize it. And I'm going to acknowledge Victor for this graphic. In fact, all the graphics are Victor's. He has a great way of saying things in pictures. You know, the quality of solution may have things like your vision statement, the business impact, and what you expect to have happen, or your outcomes, your critical success factors, in this list that I have here on the left. So these are the kinds of things that you're baking into the quality of your solution or planning in, so that you can realize. But look down here at the motivation. The motivation. There has to be a reason that the vision really has to be so motivating that people really want to get on board, really want to get on the boat, if you will, so that they can help realize that. And so that's the acceptance of the change. And this is the leading change model. Basically, these are change levers that if you will really take care and watch these change leaders and plan around these change levers, then you will have a more successful change. And so I'm going to sit for a minute on this particular slide because I want to make sure that you write these things down and think about these things, and I'm going to explain them a little bit to you. So change levers to create a shared need. Basically, that means that you need a sponsor for the change. You need to get those people who are going to lead the change on board. I say that we don't need leaders unless we're leading change, that the very work of a leader is to lead people through change. It's through change to a new vision, through change through a better culture for the environment, for the company, through change for systems that enable our work a whole lot better, all those kinds of change, or organizational structure so that people have new roles and we can redefine things and make sure that people are carrying their weight and not carrying for others' weight. So all of those things really, the desire is to make things better, to make things operate better, more efficiently, to serve the customer better. Those are all the reasons why we need to change, and we need to create a vision around that, or a shared need, and we need leaders to step up and actually be leaders for the change. So this is around this creating a shared need, is getting the right leaders on board, helping them to understand the role and the actions they have to take, make sure that they are going to devote enough time and really make this a priority, make sure that they're really fluent in any of the issues or the problems or the solutions. So if you're moving to a new culture, what are the drivers of that new culture? What are the underpinnings? What's the purpose that you're trying to serve? You know, how are you expecting people to act? What are the norms of the culture? Those kind of things for culture. So leaders need to be well planted in this kind of thing. So once you have your leaders identified, creating the shared need is to make sure that you have the data to demonstrate why you have to change. So I'm going to take the Affordable Care Act, which we're all going through, and 2016 is a big year for corporations, for companies actually of all sizes. And so I know the insurance company has been sending me information about the big changes, and they're giving, 3 months. Actually, it's September, so they started in August, starting to say, okay, big change. Actually, they started when we signed up last October, and then they said big change coming and so forth. So they've been really making sure that people understand why there's a need to change and getting the information out ahead of time to say, change is coming, change is coming. Y'all are probably dealing with the same thing that I am. And that's a good way to start to help people understand there's a need. We have to respond to the Affordable Care Act. We have to set up insurance in the way that it's envisioned under the Affordable Care Act. So there you go. You create the shared need. I think I've said enough on that. Shape the right vision. I think you know what that is. Basically, the right vision is where you get into scoping issues. So is this change going, let's say that you're a company that has multiple locations. Is it a change what's the scope of it? Is it just for this area, or is it for every area that we serve? Is it just for the engineers in the group, or is it for our customer service reps and our leaders? I mean, what is that scope? So that has to be baked into what that vision is. Then we want to mobilize commitment, and that has to do with making sure that you have identified what sorts of actions, who are our stakeholders, and what kind of actions do they need to be doing in order to help us get through this change. So, for instance, Affordable Care Act, we've got to make sure that our HR, our human resources, is tapping into the legal community to make sure they understand how they have to execute this Affordable Care Act. We need to make sure that leaders are aware of how that's going to impact the bottom line and the profits, because it will. We need to make sure that our employees know how the paying for insurance, how is that going to shift? And so now we're really getting into mobilizing this commitment. And it's kind of, when you think about Affordable Care Act, we're probably dragging a lot of us kicking and screaming into it, but those that are at the forefront of that change, it's legal firms, the insurance firms, the human resources, and certainly the leaders of the company in terms of, how it affects the bottom line, how it affects people's benefits, how it affects people in what, their out-of-pocket costs, so forth and so on. We need to be sure that people understand that, what those changes are going to be. So that's the mobilizing. And then communicate relentlessly, and I've talked about that. I think you know what that is. That's really making sure that information is flowing before the change, getting people ready for the change, telling them the need for the change, telling them how it's going to affect them. And you're doing these in pace. You really need a great communication plan that's dealing with all those topics through the implementation and then beyond, to understand if the change was made well. And then aligning infrastructure. So I've talked about how the infrastructure has to change inside businesses to deal with the Affordable Care Act. So for your culture, how does the infrastructure need to align to support the culture? When I think about culture, I think about, okay, are people aware of, are we baking the norms of the culture that we want into the performance management? In other words, how people are evaluated? Are we making sure that we're sending the messages inside of all of our training? Are we doing corporate communications and communicating with our employees about what does it mean to have this norm? We're going to treat people with respect. What does that mean? What is a non-respect, disrespect? What is disrespecting each other? So, you have to get down into really granular detail communications when you're dealing with change and aligning the infrastructure. Then to sustain the momentum, it's just making sure that the parts and pieces that have to be baked in, the infrastructure, the leadership, the impact to employees, the communication systems that you have, that in every way you're really supporting this change that's about to happen. And then you monitor it and adapt. Let me give you a tool that helps to monitor this. Let me stop for a minute, and Victor, that was a lot, but I wanted to be sure that people know that these are the levers to change. So let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, I do, Cynthia. Thank you for that. Just a quick comment on myself before I ask a couple questions. When selecting, this is just my style, but when selecting leaders to drive this change, don't necessarily think title and top down. I think it's very effective to mix it up. Leaders are great, middle managers are great, but I'm a big fan of including a leader from the front line, from the bottom rung of the ladder, if you will. But people that are doing the work, the worker bees that we sometimes call them, there's plenty of leaders in there too. And don't be too centric on title when picking leaders. But I do have a couple questions, Cynthia, and this goes to the vision as motivation. First question is, how do you strike a chord with individual drivers when a vision is corporate? So I infer that, I'll read it again. How do you strike a chord with individual drivers when a vision is corporate? So the vision's coming from top down. How do you get these individual drivers to buy into it?
The best way on vision is if people will give testimonials, in other words, tap into the emotional intelligence of others. And I did a communicating change webinar a couple of months back where I kind of addressed that issue. But the thing about vision is that you need to paint the vision and then you need to share a testimony as to why. A personal story from a leader that is clearly authentic and, you know, basically from the heart, if you will, taps the emotional intelligence of people. So a great way to do that is to put them on video and have them tell why. So, you know, to your story, Victor, or your point about leadership, I ran a huge change effort where I worked with a company that was an electric company, and we were literally having people lose their lives because of poles. Poles are big, very difficult to deal with, and we had a lot of regions that had mountainous terrain, and they would roll down on top of our people. And so we did a huge pole safety effort. Part of that was something that was going to be hugely controversial, and that is we had people linemen that climbed poles, and they would fall from the poles, or they would accidentally scale down the pole. You know, they usually had devices that would stick into the poles, but they may not. Well, and so we had huge incidents, and they decided to go with fall restraint. Hugely controversial because a lot of these linemen were extremely safe. They never had they never had a cutout on a pole, which is where they fall down the pole. They just, you know, it was like a badge of honor to be able to climb a pole and get back down it safely across your career. And so these are like heroes, right? They're mostly men. We had women too, but they really prided themselves on being able to do pole climbing safely. So it was a big deal. And basically we just had and we invited linemen, by the way. Linemen were there, people that dealt with the poles in the pole yards, drivers of pole trucks. They were all involved in solving this issue. And we had the CEO basically do a video, and he explained why he thought it was so important that people went home every night to their families safely, and that he didn't really want to have to go knock on the door of, or have any of his executives have to go knock on the door of the families who might have lost someone that day because of a pole incident. And that's the way you tap in with vision, is to say there needs to be a compelling reason behind why you're doing something, and it may not be like safety. You know, it may be we have to change out your Word. We're going to the new Office 365. It's going to be online, and that was a big change. It helps if you can, you know, either tap into the heart or tap into the pocketbook of employees. Those are two ways to really help get the vision across. And the more you engage that with leaders telling their stories, the better off you are.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Long answer.
The next question, I believe you've answered the next question. Next question is, I'll just kind of lead into it, ellipse. So vision addresses how to create a shared and shareable need. So you've covered the vision. So, and you spoke about a shared need. The phrase shareable need is interesting because that implies and this person who asked the question can correct me, but a shareable need implies a transfer, if you will. One need transfers to another, and I think of that as a value chain within a company. One's work product or effort may be handed off to somebody else who's going to then, add to it and then hand it off. And so that is a shareable need with a common cause and vision. Am I on track with that?
Yeah, absolutely. That just taps into the fact that we're connected. And we're connected in the way that work flows through the company, information flows through the company, and the way that we help each other get our jobs done, help each other get, and so it really taps into that idea of we're connected and we have to work together and share the load and share the need so that we can help, resolve and fulfill the need.
There you go. So it's the phrase I use is interconnected and interdependent. We all need each other.
Yes.
But let's
exactly.
We'll just keep rolling along. Thank you, Cynthia.
You're welcome. Okay. So let's see if I can get this going again. So help me out a little bit. Take another poll for me and kind of tell me where you are in rating. How would you rate your change efforts? And I did a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 approach. So would you launch that poll for us, Victor?
There you go. You want to speak to it?
Thank you.
So we got about 30 seconds here, folks.
A lot of times what I hear is that, there's a lot of problems with the change, and if, let's say that it's a 1, if that 1 is like 10 to 20% effectiveness, whereas a 5 would be 100% effectiveness, we can all say that we're always wanting to shoot for that exceptional. And exceptional change is where people get it, they understand it, and they're willing to go that direction because they understand the need. So that would be exceptional, is where people say, yeah, how can I help? I get it, I see why, so how can I help? What can I do? That's when you know that you're starting to move into that exceptional change, where people are starting to stand up and say, I'll help. Okay, Victor, how'd we do?
Okay, I'm just juggling my interface here. Thank you for that. So, the most common answer is at 45% fair. It's companies doing a fair job, and 30%, which is pretty high, state is problematic. 10% feel they have a good process, just 10%, and then a 5% is filled with roadblocks. That's a problem. That can be really, really frustrating for individuals. And another reason to reach out to Cynthia and talk about what roadblocks there are and how to clear them. And understanding you can't do it all alone, but you can create, that's where leaders come in at any level and advocate positive change and positive solutions. I'll let you take it, Cynthia.
Okay, if you could shut down that poll. Thank you. Try again. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to show you a tool that we would always use when we were using this model, and it's really easy to set up. Usually what we would do is at different points during the change process, so at the different stages of change, and we would come together and start to rate what we saw in terms of these leading change: create a shared need, shape the right vision, mobilize commitment, communicate relentlessly, align the infrastructure, and sustain momentum. So when you come together the first time, and I'm thinking like your change team or a leadership team or something like that, or maybe your staff, you and your staff, or maybe your whole company if you're a small company leader, you come together and you just start to say, what is our leading change profile? And you answer, just like I put that poll up, you have people basically use dots or something and just go up there and fill in this chart around each one of these. Where do they think they are? So let's use an example. Here's what it might look like. So really, I'm going to say that instead of initiative, we could say initiative, but let's just say person A, B, and C. So person A, let's call this person A. Person A says, we're fair at the leading and creating the need and mobilizing, but we really stink at mobilizing the commitment. So they see themselves as really stinking at mobilizing commitment and sustaining momentum. So when I think about these as levers, then it'd be nice to get fair up, but where you really need to focus, fair might actually creating a need and shaping the right vision might actually increase if you could get the mobilizing commitment better. So that's where you would really want to emphasize your change effort. Now let's look at this person B, the red one. They think that they stink on everything, but they're communicating like crazy. So obviously their focus needs to they need to start with creating the need. Actually, to be honest with you, they probably need to go back to leaders and either get their leaders in the mode of leading, or they need to change out their leaders. And agreeing with Victor, you need not just people with titles, but people who are influential. If you have somebody that's really negative on the change, bring them in. Have them have to lead the change. They don't generally want to sabotage their work. They will be happy to sabotage someone else's, but they're less likely to sabotage the change, if they're involved in it, if their name is on it. So on this person A, they really feel like they need a change out of leaders, and that would be the first step. And then, going back and saying, okay, how do we create a shared need? And taking these steps one at a time is these levers, and getting those levers working together one at a time. And then person C, they're clearly, from their perspective, they see things are going pretty well. So you might find out, okay, why are these so different? Why do you see things so differently? These could be leaders in different organizations. In this person C, the purple, obviously somebody's doing a good job of leading and creating the shared need and so forth. So it's really interesting and insightful to go and do this chart. It's really simple to set up. You just set up a chart, and I like to do it on white paper or on a board and just kind of draw it up there, and then give people dots or marker and have them actually mark in or rate where everything is, and then talk about it and find out why some are high and some are low. And those that are high, maybe you have something to learn from them that you can replicate elsewhere in the organization. Those that are low, maybe they're pointing out a problem that no one else is seeing. So that conversation is hugely insightful and very helpful when you go to talk about what the heck's going on with our change initiative. It's not doing very well. And this is how, by using this chart on a regular basis, say monthly, or it depends on how big the change is and how long it lasts, doing this kind of rating scale, and you can put it into SurveyMonkey if you want, and have it calculate. But this is a wonderful visual demonstration of the people and how they see things, and how the way they see things, if they talk about it, will help you shore up some issues that you have with change. So this is very, very, very effective. Any questions or comments, Victor?
No, we're good at the moment. We're good, thank you.
Okay. So those two charts really work together as you work through change. So this would help, this little leading change profile. This is a way to debrief. When you get the groups together, and the groups may be teams, they may be employees, it kind of depends on your setup. But you want to ask about what our strengths are. So, for instance, you could say, what do we see as our strengths? Well, we all kind of come together Where do we come together? We don't come together very much, but it sounds like communication, if I were to look at this chart, this right here, communicating relentlessly, looks like there's some strength there. It's not as low. So that talks about, okay, looks like we're doing a pretty decent job of communicating. So how do we leverage that? What are our deficiencies? Again, you can go over your chart. And if I were to look, I would say, well, surely sustaining the momentum, also mobilizing the commitment, those seem to be some pretty significant deficiencies that we need to really talk about. What consistencies or inconsistencies exist, and that's pretty obvious. Again, when you pull up this chart, you can talk about that. Where are we consistent? Where are we inconsistent? And why are our perceptions different? And how do we address our differences? And it could be that the perceptions are different just because of the communication styles of the people in the room. They're just different. Or it could be because really they're working with a different team and that has a different perspective. So it's important to point out why perceptions are so different. And it's important to point out why what's the most serious threat to change. If I were looking at this chart, I talked about this, but mobilizing commitment looks like a really very serious threat to the change, as well as sustaining momentum. So I'd be really looking at how we can do better at those and who needs to address the threats. So is it the change team? Is it the leadership? We did such large change initiatives that affected thousands of employees. We would start at the top and work our way out. So we would have change teams from all the different companies. Then somebody would be responsible for going back to the company and talking to the leadership and having them. We would do all kinds of things, but we would set up what our communication was and make sure that we were constantly communicating, and we would raise the issue of threats, the things that we saw that were really a significant roadblock for us. So if you use a model, and this is one model, there are many systems, but I think systems are really helpful when you're dealing with change, especially big changes, which is what I said. If you have a model like this and you're monitoring the impact of the change, and every change, there's ways that you can monitor it. There are ways, for instance, one change, we were talking about service restoration, and so we were monitoring our customers' satisfaction with regard to service restoration. On the pole safety, we were monitoring pole incidents. Were they getting less and less and less? We wanted less and less and less. And so, there's ways you can begin to monitor the effect of your change right away, actually, because the minute you start communicating, it's really interesting. And if you measure along with it, it's real interesting that things will start to change, even if the change isn't complete. In other words, the implementation of the new system or the culture change or whatever, it takes time for it to be complete, but you can make inroads right away. So it helps you, this leading change helps you overcome challenges. Things like the inadequate attention or support from leadership, and I would say, executives, management, as well as influential leaders. Lack of understanding for why change is necessary, the lack of acceptance or buy-in. It helps you deal with strong resistance because you can surface it really soon. Right away, you can start to see where the resistors are and listen to why they're resisting. And it may be that by listening, you can tweak the quality of the solution to address the reason they're resisting. A lot of times we roll out systems that are a lot more complex. So in the design phase, if you've got people that you're getting feedback from, that will say, look, that's really, that's 16 mouse clicks. I only want one mouse click. So it's real important to engage people all along the way so that you can hear the resistance and affect changes that will really help lower the resistance. It helps you overcome any slow reaction to the obstacles or the threats that are in the way. And it also helps you move people towards the new way and away from the old way. So change, never forget that at the base of any change is a change in behavior. And to get at that change in behavior, you have to deal with the belief systems and the attitudes and the mindsets of those that you need to really adopt the change, which means you need to bring them in as part of the change agents and hear what they have to say, and then have them help you craft the solutions so that you can move people gradually towards the change, culture change or the structure change. Okay, so there are your change levers, and I probably should have put leading change. You'll see it on the chart. Leading change is really one of the top change levers. So the leaders who are to lead this are a very important aspect to it. But these are the change levers that you can use to help drive big change. And it doesn't take as much as it seems like, but what it does do is it helps you focus on your change in the areas where it'll make the biggest difference. Like, for instance, aligning the infrastructure may make more difference than anything else. So it helps you understand, you know, if you're getting there in terms of the shared need and the vision and mobilizing commitment, and if the communication is being heard, and in the ways that you need to align the infrastructure in terms of systems and processes and things like that. So there you go. There's the leading change model that we have used very successfully in very big changes. And I hope that's been helpful to folks. And Victor, I'm going to pass it to you.
Okay, thank you, Cynthia. I really appreciate that. And so we've had a number of people, as common, join us at different points during this webinar, and that's just understandable. It's a busy world. So we do post this online on our website, businessperformanceusa.org. It's also on YouTube. We welcome you to come to our website and become a member. It's always complimentary. And that's the best thing for you, because from there on that site, you can engage Cynthia, myself, and others in questions. Because, again, what this webinar does is give an overview and create awareness is what's possible. And Cynthia's gone further. She's given you some very good structure. But context and relevance is always very, very critical. And that's why we encourage you to have a conversation with us, a dialogue and interchange. And let's get specific about what change needs to take place in your organization, what roadblocks may be in the way. And there's always legacy issues as well. So join us, talk to us. You can see Cynthia's contact information there, and we encourage you to use it and learn from us. That's why we're here. We're an organization of executive volunteers. We believe in pollinating great ideas to make people's lives, careers, and companies better. And next week, you can join us on September 29th. Lend Me Your Ear, Keys to Better Listening with Kathy Wright and Cynthia Stewart. Listening is critical to communications, of course, and that applies to what we learned here today. Communication, as Cynthia talks about, is always a two-way street. Being able to listen and clarify is really, really important to initiating change. So next week, September 29th, will be a good dovetail to what we learned today. And that's about it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We encourage you to participate once again. Cynthia, you're wonderful. Your depth of knowledge is impressive as always, and I know we could talk for much, much more given your experience. So thank you for that. Thank you, Dr. Jeff, for being our rock and our strategic and moral and ethical support. And thank you for our audience for joining us. We really appreciate it. Cynthia, anything else? If not, I'll just close this baby out.
We may have one more question.
Okay, good. Let me pull that up. More of a comment, shout out from the folks. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Rogers. And indeed, I'm well, and I hope you are as well, in addition. So that's about it. I'll check that one more time. We're good.
Okay, thanks a lot, Victor.
Thanks, everybody. Be well.